The call came while someone was presenting revenue projections on a wall-sized screen. I remember watching the numbers more than listening to the voice on the phone. My sister's voice was steady, which made it worse. Our father had collapsed that morning. By the time she reached the hospital, there was nothing to be done. I excused myself quietly. No one asked why. Grief didn't crash into me. It moved slowly, like a heavy door closing somewhere behind my ribs. I sent a short message to my aunt, my department head, requesting 4 days for the funeral and to help my mother settle paperwork. I added no emotion, just dates. She called me into her office within the hour. Her tone wasn't cruel. That almost made it harder to argue with. She spoke about an upcoming audit, about client sensitivity, about critical timing. Then she leaned back in her chair and folded her hands. "Choose between career and family," she said, calmly, as if outlining a business strategy. There was no anger in her face, just expectation. I looked at the framed certifications behind her, the awards, the family photos from company retreats. I understood, in that moment, how thoroughly she believed the company was the family. I nodded. I didn't say I chose anything. I walked out, cleared my desk, and sent a brief out of office notice. No one stopped me. That night, after the house had emptied of neighbors and condolences, I opened my laptop at my childhood dining table. My father's glasses were still resting beside a stack of unopened mail. My mother was asleep in the next room. For years, I had allowed the firm to manage a private asset portfolio that legally belonged to me, inheritance structured through trusts, diversified holdings consolidated under one advisory branch, 8 million, transparent, documented, within my authority to relocate at any time. I had left it there out of loyalty and convenience. I reviewed the contracts slowly, compliance clauses, withdrawal rights, transfer windows. Everything aligned. I didn't rush. I didn't act out of spite. I simply initiated the transfer to an independent institution. The confirmation email arrived at 20:14 a.m. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a while. I expected to feel vindicated. I didn't. I felt anchored. The funeral passed in a blur of restrained tears and logistical conversations. My father had been practical. He would have hated theatrics. Standing beside my mother, I realized something simple: absence rearranges priorities without asking permission. When I returned to work 4 days later, my badge still worked. My desk was untouched. The quiet felt different though, less casual, more watchful. At noon, HR asked me to join a meeting. My aunt was already seated at the conference table. So was a compliance officer I recognized from quarterly reviews and an external consultant flown in for the audit. The atmosphere was clinical. The compliance officer spoke first. He referenced liquidity reports, capital allocation forecasts, a sudden shortfall identified in internal projections. Apparently, my portfolio had been factored into strategic planning models. Not illegally, but optimistically. When I withdrew it, the models fractured. My aunt's face remained composed, but her posture shifted, subtle, defensive. The consultant then addressed bereavement policy. He read from the employee handbook. Standard leave allowances, documentation requirements. There was a pause before he referenced an email, my request, and the written response suggesting career prioritization. The words sounded different when spoken aloud by someone without family ties. No one raised their voice. No one accused her directly. But authority had entered the room, and it was unmistakable. The consultant concluded that reporting structures involving immediate family presented risk exposure, both operational and ethical. A recommendation was made I would report to a different executive moving forward. All portfolio management related to personal assets would be separated entirely from firm advisory channels. It was framed as procedural improvement. My aunt didn't look at me. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it brief. "I will continue my role," I said, under revised reporting lines. My private investments will remain external. That was all. There was no apology offered. None requested. In the weeks that followed, the office adjusted. Meetings continued. Targets were met. The firm absorbed the financial recalibration with visible strain but professional efficiency. My relationship with my aunt changed shape. It became precise, cordial, measured. Family gatherings grew quieter but not hostile. Something had ended, not dramatically but definitively. One evening after work, I visited my father's grave alone. I told him about the restructuring, about the audit, about the portfolio. I didn't frame it as revenge. It wasn't. It was the first time I chose not to bargain with my own boundaries for the sake of approval. Back at the office, nothing about my demeanor signaled triumph. I met deadlines. I spoke when necessary. I stopped volunteering for invisible labor. Power hadn't flipped loudly. It had settled into something undeniable. I no longer needed permission to be both competent and human. The company kept my position. I kept my dignity.